Welcome, believers. Welcome, you wonderfully weird people. Welcome to UFO, aliens, and weird stuff. Now, I would like to say a massive thank you to Linda, right, one of my TikTok followers. She wants to share a UFO sighting from Glasgow. What would be great? So next week we are going to do a phone-in, right, a genuine sighting from the UK, right. So tune in if you can, or watch it when I post it next week. Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate it. Right, so today we are going to add a few sightings from PREFOS, police reported UFO sightings. And of course, we've got to talk about the Trump disclosure rumours, right? So, US President Donald Trump says he will direct US agencies, including the Defense Department, to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files on aliens and extraterrestrial life, right? Now, call me cynical. I don't mean to be, right? But most of those will be redacted, all right? Now, Trump made the declaration in a post, Truth Social, apparently, after he accused Barack Obama early in the day of revealing classified information when the former president said aliens are real on a podcast last week. And I've seen that. Right, he did say aliens are real, but there is a little get-out clause, right? So, he's not supposed to be doing that, Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One, adding he made a big mistake. Why did he make a big mistake, Trump? Why? Would you know something we don't, right? Now, asked if he also thinks aliens are real, Trump answered, well, I don't know if they're real or not. And he has said that in the past, right? Now, former US President Obama told podcast host Brian Tyler Cohen that he thinks aliens are real in an interview released last Saturday. And I've watched that, right? They're real, but I haven't seen them. And they're not being kept in Area 51, Obama said. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hide it from the President of the United States. And they do. They do hide it from the President of the United States, right? Now, if you think about it, they're only part-time employees. 4 years for one term, 8 years for two, right? Now, this we'll say Black Ops project has been going on for decades, ever since the Roswell crash in 1947. I believe that's when it started. That was the first time the United States government lied about the crash at Roswell, and it just continued from there, right? Now, after the comment made headlines, Obama sought to clarify. Now, he says he thinks it's statistically likely life exists beyond Earth, given the vastness of the universe. And there's his get-out clause, right? In a follow-up post on Instagram, Obama, who served as US president, you know that, between 2009 and 17, clarified, I see no evidence during my presidency that extraterrestrials have made contact with us. Really? Right? He probably doesn't know. Like I say, they don't get told. Now, Obama's initial comment were made during a quick-fire lightning round of questions on the podcast, right? There was no indication that Obama relied on classified information when he gave the interview. Now, this I've got from the BBC. The BBC has contacted Obama for comment. The Democrat and Trump, a Republican, are long-standing mutual political antagonists. So it doesn't seem like Obama ever got back to the BBC. Now, for his part, Trump said on Thursday on Air Force One that while a lot of people believe in the existence of aliens, he never talks about it and he doesn't have an opinion on it. Then a few hours later, he posted on Truth Social that based on the tremendous interest shown, he will seek the release of files, right? He will seek the release of files. Not that he was going to do it. Now, he said he will seek the release of files related to aliens and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and any and all other information connected to this highly complex but extremely interesting and important matter. Nothing's going to come of that, right? It is my honest opinion that disclosure, the type we want, will never happen. I mean, if you think about it, it already has. right? And people just aren't interested. I'll give you a perfect example, right? This is a great example. I was listening to Talk TV on the radio, and they were talking about Andrew. Randy Andy, we all know the subject, don't we? Right, and this man phoned up and said, do you realise the importance of what's just happened? Trump has just done disclosure. Disclosure is coming, and you're talking about Randy Andy. And the station wasn't really interested, right? Peter Cardwell, the presenter, didn't dismiss him, but it was just, well, kind of sidelined. So, in my honest opinion, it's never going to happen. Now, as I say, Peter Cardwell, it was quite random, and I listened to it for quite a long time, right? Because you had stories of Randy Andy, and then you had people phoning up about UFOs. But it wasn't taken as a joke, but he said, look, you don't want me to talk about Andrew, but you want me to talk about little green men. That's exactly what he did say, right? So, but saying that, look, I know they exist. You know they exist. And to push my point, I'm going to tell you 3 police UFO sightings to add to the UK UFO Hotspot map. And 2 of them are fantastic stories, right? Now, the first one is the Bury Nocturnal Light, right? 03:25 hours on the 15th of August 1975. Location Bury, Greater Manchester, and I'm going to number this as number 69, right? Now, in the early hours of Friday the 15th of August 1975, at approximately 3:25 a.m., 2 uniformed police officers on a routine patrol reported observing an unusual light in the sky. Now, the officers were in separate marked vehicles. Now, that's important, right? One patrol car was positioned north of Bury, and the other was inside the town itself, and both men were on duty. So, the observation, right? The first officer noticed a bright light moving across the sky in the direction of Hayward. Now, it was not flashing like a conventional aircraft beacon and did not appear to follow the typical flight path. And even though you might think that's random, I sky watch all the time, and you do get used to your typical flight paths, right? Now, shortly afterwards, the second officer in a different part of town also observed the same object. Now, the light was described as bright and steady. There is no record of sound being heard, nor any report of erratic manoeuvres. It appeared to travel in a controlled manner before eventually disappearing from view. Now, like I say, the time, 3:25 hours, was noted. There was an independent witness, a member of the public, also reported seeing the object. Now, the additional sighting is important. It indicates that the observation was not confined to a single vantage point or to one individual's perception. At least 3 witnesses observed the same phenomenon, but from different locations. Now, the event was later logged and classified as UFO classification, nocturnal light, on-duty sighting, 2 officers, right? Now, NL, nocturnal light, simply designates a light observed at night without further structural details. There was no reports of landing, no physical trace, no interference with equipment or direct interaction. So, in 1975, right, UFO reports were not uncommon in the UK. In fact, in 77, they proper blew up. However, sightings made by on-duty police officers tend to carry additional weight due to their training in observation and reporting. And I always say that, right? That said, a nocturnal light offers limited details, without shape, distance, no radar data. So conclusions are difficult, right? But what remains is a straightforward account. At 3:25 a.m. on the 15th of August 1975, 2 officers in separate vehicles in Bury observed a bright moving light heading towards Hayward. A civilian also saw it, and the event was logged and classified. No explanation was formally attached, right? A short but sweet sighting. Not exciting, but important nevertheless, right? So the next one is from Salford Docks, right, in Lancashire, and I'm gonna name this number 70, the Salford Docks Close Encounter, and this one is fantastic, right? Remember, these are police sightings, right? So it's August. Salford Docks was largely silent at that time of night. The shipping era was fading, but the docks still carried the smell of oil, damp concrete, and tidal water. You can just imagine it, right? Security lights cast long reflections across the basin, and every footstep echoed slightly off the warehouse walls, right? I'm just trying to picture it. Just trying to paint a picture for you, right? A PC Fred Pullen was walking his beat alone on foot patrol. You notice more, right? You do. You know, if you're driving, you notice nothing. If you're cycling, you notice a bit more. If you're walking, you tend to spot stuff, right? The creak of metal, the slap of water against the dock walls, right? He's noticing all this. The way light shifts across surfaces. It was during this routine patrol that he became aware of something unusual, the approach, right? At first, it was simply a presence in the sky, a bit like our previous story, right? Movement where there should not have been none. Then he saw it clearly, a large oval-shaped object approaching his location. Now, it's not a distant light, right? It's not high altitude either. It was coming towards him. Scary stuff, right? The object closed to within approximately 30 metres of his position. It hovered above a nearby immunity block. There was no sound, as common with these sightings, no rotor noise, no engine hum. In fact, there was no mechanical vibration at all. Now, at docks, silence is noticeable. Even in the early hours, there is usually wind, distant traffic, shifting metal, scurrying of rats and rodents, cats, right? The object hovered in complete silence. Now, PC Pullen estimated it to be around 30 feet in diameter, and he remained where he was. The object held position above the building for a short period. Not flickering, not unstable, just hovering. Basically controlled by something, right? He would later describe it simply as something solid and present. Not a vague light in the sky, but a defined form. Then without haste, it moved horizontally. It travelled across the dock area towards another building. And again, it stopped again. And again, it hovered. This time for several minutes. What was it looking for, right? Was it looking for something? From his position on the ground, he was looking up at an object suspended above industrial structures, close enough to judge its scale, and still no sound, no downdraft, and no visible means of propulsion. Then it left. The departure was sudden. Gone, right? The object accelerated in an angle with what he described as a tremendous burst of speed. Not gradual, all right, like a conventional aircraft or a helicopter, not fading slowly into distance like we all see when we watch these things. A rapid, decisive acceleration upwards and away, and then it was gone. Now, he did not immediately report what he had seen. And I'll get that, right? Concern about ridicule played a part in the mid-1970s. Officers were cautious about attaching their names to unusual reports. And why? Because you would be sacked, right? Now, he finished his shift. But near the end of the night, another officer who had been patrolling a different section of the docks at the time asked him a simple question, right? He said, "Did you see a strange light over the docks earlier?" Now, when they compared details, they realised that they had witnessed the same object, but from different geographical positions. What gave his story some credence, right? Now, the case was later classified as CE1, right? Close encounter of the first kind. On-duty sighting, 2 officers, and the source from this was a PC Pullen and the police reported UFO sightings website, right? Now, a CE1 designation reflects a close-range visual encounter without reported physical interaction. Now, what do you think then? So let's have a recap. 10-2 on a routine patrol at Salford Docks, a police constable reported observing a silent oval-shaped object approximately 30 feet in diameter. It approached to within 30 metres, hovered twice above dockside buildings, and then departed with rapid acceleration. And to strengthen it, a second officer independently observed the same object from another position on the docks. And the case was later classified as CE1. Now, the last sighting. This is just as good, right? And like I clarify, I keep doing it, don't I? These are police sightings, right? They got more chance of, well, they got more to lose by coming out and telling their story than they have to gain, right? So this was in Salisbury, Salisbury, Wiltshire, Churchfield Road, and I'm going to classify this as number 71, right? Okay. Witnesses, 2 uniformed police officers, including a PC Vivian White. Now, the reason that's important is she's actually put her name to this, right? And the source is a Steve Gerrard from the Southampton UFO group, right? Now, dawn was beginning to loosen the grip at night. That's how it started, right? At 6:15 in the morning, Salisbury was caught in that delicate shift between darkness and morning. And it's important that you get an idea or you get a feeling of what's going on, right? When rooftops are silhouetted and the horizon goes faintly behind cathedral spires, right? The street was quiet. Delivery vans were not yet rolling and commuters were still fast asleep, right? 2 uniformed officers were on mobile patrol near Churchfield Road. And as I say, one of them was a PC Vivian White, and she has given her name to this, right? Routine patrol, steady progress through familiar streets, the kind of shift where nothing dramatic is expected. All the burglars are gone home, right? Just paperwork, waiting back at the station, and the slow transition into daylight, right? So 6:15, you know, you give it another 45 minutes, the road's going to get busy, people are going to go to work, right? But at that time of the morning, it is very quiet, right? Then something unusual appeared in the sky, right? The object appears. At first, it was just a glow, right? Yellow, orange, distinct against the paling sky. But as their patrol vehicle advanced, the glow resolved into form. And this is what I like about this story, right? It wasn't a distant aircraft. It wasn't a flicker and reflection. It had shape, close enough to register instantly. A saucer-shaped object. The classic everyday saucer-shaped UFO, right? Disc-like, solid in appearance, moving slowly at an estimated altitude of 500 to 700 feet, far lower than commercial traffic would normally travel over the town. So the officers slowed. They slowed their vehicle, then stopped, right? Instinct took over, right? They pulled the vehicle to the side of the road and stepped out, and they stood beneath it, right? Now, there's a significant psychological shift when you leave the safety of a car, right? Because inside the vehicle, there's glass, still, a barrier between the observer and the unknown, and the ability to drive away really quickly. Outside, you are under it, right? Now, the morning air was cool, the town still. The object moved deliberately overhead. Its yellow-orange glow neither flashing nor blinking like regulated aviation lights. It did not waver. It did not appear unstable. It appeared controlled and deliberate, like it was under intelligence, right? Now, the officers watched it as it continued at a slow pace, steady, almost as if it was surveying them while they were surveying it, right? Now, the colour reportedly pulsed subtly between deep amber and bright yellow, though not in a flashing sequence, like a typical aircraft navigational light. It seemed self-illuminating. And that's their words, right? No engine noise, of course, there never is there? No rotor sound, so it wasn't a helicopter, right? No discernible propulsion system, right? Just the low hum of early morning wind through nearby buildings. So it was dead silent. And not only was it silent, it was hovering there, right? Then it did something that separates this sighting from a simple light anomaly. It stopped, right? So it stopped. The object came to a complete hover, remaining stationary for approximately 45 seconds. And I think it was watching them. right? 45 seconds is a long time when you're watching something inexplicable in open sky, right? Well, it's long enough to check the edges of the craft, right? It's long enough to scan for wings, right? Now, you sit there and you count for 45 seconds. It's long enough to question what you're seeing and realise it isn't changing into anything familiar. And it hung there over Salisbury, silent, suspended and deliberate. Now, the officers later reported no visible means of lift, no downdraft, no sound increase, just a saucer-shaped object hovering over Churchfield Road. And then, without warning, the stillness broke. The object accelerated. A bit like our last story, right? Not gradually, not like a plane building speed. It shot away. Now, described as moving at a tremendous speed far beyond conventional aircraft behaviour at that altitude. In its wake, now this is unusual, it left a vapour trail lasting approximately 15 seconds. And this is a particularly intriguing detail, isn't it, right? Because the trail was visible, lingering in the early morning light, a streak marking the trajectory of departure. It wasn't a long contrail stretching across the sky like high altitude jets produce. It was shorter and sharper. It was consistent with rapid acceleration at lower altitude. And within moments, the object was gone from view. It wasn't fading into distance. It wasn't banking. It just rapidly disappeared beyond the horizon. And then silence. You know, can you imagine the two? You're just sitting there dumbfounded, right? Now, the officers stood in the cold morning air, processing what they had just witnessed, as you would, right? Two trained observers, wondering what the hell is going on. Both outside the vehicle, right? Both watched simultaneously, right? No ambiguity of what, did you just see that? Because they both did. They returned to the patrol car and did what professionals do. And this is the beauty about police. They documented it, right? Because that's what police do. An official report was submitted detailing, right, saucer shape, so it wasn't a plane, yellow and orange correlation, estimated altitude 500 to 700 feet, hovering duration approximately 45 seconds with a high-speed departure and left a 15-second vapour trail. Right, now this sighting was later classified, believe it or not, as nocturnal light, though the structured disc description does add weight beyond a simple light anomaly. Now this should have been classed as CE1, shouldn't it? Now why this case stands out? Well, first, it's a fantastic story, right? Several elements elevate the incident within British police UFO reports, right? Daybreak visibility, right? It wasn't late at night. Clear saucer-shaped description, not just a point of light, right? Observed from outside the vehicle. And a documented hover phase, a bit like the last story at the docks. A rapid acceleration event and a visible vapour trail. What is unusual? Now, an official report submitted, and notably, the presence of PC Vivian White, right, whose name is attached to the account, does lend indefiable credibility rather than anonymous reporting, eh? So there's something deeply... So, look, let's think about the human element, right? There is something deeply unsettling about a hovering object, right? Movement can be rationalised. Distance can distort perception. But hovering, stationary, against gravity, challenges expectations, doesn't it, right? Imagine standing on a quiet Salisbury street in the half-light of dawn, looking at a dish-shaped object glowing amber above you, holding position without sound, right? Because that would freak me right out, right? There would have been a moment, brief but undeniable, where the ordinary rules of the sky felt suspended, surely. And then, as quickly as it arrived, it was gone, leaving only a faded vapour trace and two officers who would spend the rest of their shift replaying those 45 seconds in their minds, right? Now this This case is documented through Stephen Gerrard of the Southampton UFO Group and does remain one of the most structured on-duty police sightings in the UK archive, right? So, not dramatic light, darting wildly, not distant stars mistaken for aircraft, but a low altitude saucer, a flying saucer, a deliberate hover, and a departure that defied conventional flight behaviour. Right, at 6:15 hours in October near Churchfield Road, Salisbury, for just under a minute, something hovered above two police officers and then vanished into the morning sky. What a story! And I will add the three things to our map of weirdness, right? And then we can start collaborating to see if there's patterns forming. Right, so this was UFO, aliens and weird stuff. I really appreciate you sticking around, right? And like I say, next week I'm going to try and do a phone-in. I don't know if it's going to work, but we will try it, all right? We will try this phone-in. So if you get the chance, check it out next week, and we will speak to Linda and her experiences of seeing a UFO in her garden, right? And if you want to, UFOs, aliens and weird stuff at outlook.com, I will put it there, right? Email that, and if you want, I'll ring you and we'll have a chat, right? Now, if you're not too far away, I will even come and interview you at the spot where you saw the sighting, So, I don't know, if you saw it on a lonely country road on the A30, like Joyce Bowles in Winchester, or the Katie Walker incident, right, near Chard, right? I will go to that spot, meet you there, and we will discuss your sightings, and I will put it on my show. And more importantly, stick it on the map, all right? So this was UFO, aliens and weird stuff. Thanks for sticking around. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you can. That would be fantastic. And I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.